Thank you. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this Corporate Parenting Committee meeting, which is being held in line with the requirements of the Coronavirus Act 2020. Before we move to the formal business, for the benefit of those joining us online, I would firstly like to introduce myself and the committee. I am Councillor Lorna Malkin, Chair of the Corporate Parenting Committee. I am joined by Councillors Binns, Kitchen, Loughran, Lund, Scott, Stansby, Taylor and Tennant King and Spade. The committee also greatly benefits from co-opted members, and Joy Lum is joining us today. Alongside the committee, I am joined by officers who will be presenting reports and supporting the committee. Before we move on to the formal agenda items, I'd just like to confirm today's meeting procedures. We will take each item on the agenda in order, copies of which have been provided to members and which is also available on the council website. I would remind colleagues to ensure that your microphone is on mute throughout the meeting unless invited to speak, to minimise the potential of background noise disrupting the meeting broadcast. In accordance with council meeting procedure rules, my ruling as chair during a debate will be final. When invited to speak, members of the committee will need to unmute your microphones and state your name before addressing committee. Please remute your microphone once you have finished speaking. I will invite any colleague wishing to comment on the report or ask questions to do so at the appropriate points in the meeting. At the end of the debate on each item, I will seek confirmation from the meeting that it agrees to the proposed recommendations. If everyone is happy, I will then I shall proceed with our formal business. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is acceptance of apologies for absence, and we've had apologies from Mr. Paul Longworth. I also want to just bring the meeting attention to the fact that Councillor Lund has said she will have to leave about 11:30 and Councillor Kitchen about 12 o'clock. Cheryl Whitehouse will be joining us slightly late, as will Mark Neville, but their reports are later on the agenda. Okay, to move to item 2, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the Corporate Parenting Committee meeting held on the 25th of November 2020. Does any member have any questions or corrections on the minutes? I take it then that members are happy to approve those minutes. Okay, item 3, Chair's announcement. Like many other committee members, I've recently attended briefings on the Families Achieving Change service and the Mockingbird project, and I suggest that an update on this project be brought to a future meeting of this committee. Reports on the work of the Corporate Parenting Committee have recently gone to both the Improvement Board and the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Committee, and I have also attended a meeting with the Chair of the Scrutiny Committee to discuss establishing a virtual school governing body. Officers are looking into the logistics of this and will keep members updated. Item 4 is to note any items which the Chair has agreed to add to the agenda on the grounds of urgency, and there are no items under this number. Number 5 is declarations of interest for members. Members are reminded of the requirement to make an appropriate verbal declaration at the meeting on any items on this agenda in which they have an interest. Having done so, members are asked to complete a form detailing the declaration, which will be available from the committee officer at the meeting. And then item 6, exclusion of the public and press. That the public and press be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of agenda item 13 on the grounds that it is likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information as described in Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. Right, we'll now move on to the main agenda items. So item 7 is next step about the implementation plan for care leavers, and this is a presentation by Anne Townend. I think you're there, Anne?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Anne. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'll just see if I can check my you have to bear with me because technology is not a strong point. Can everybody see that?
I can't see anything at the moment.
No. Okay, I'll try again. Any joy?
No.
No,
No.
sorry.
No.
And do you want to send to me and I'll share my screen? Would that help?
It would help, yes.
All right, okay. If you want to start doing the presentation, and I'll try my best to share my screen. Okay.
Yeah, it was on an email, so I'll forward the email. You should have it now, Tony.
Yes, it's just arrived. So if you want to start, Anne, and then I'll start sharing my screen, and I'll try and keep up with you. Okay.
Okay. So this is our implementation plan for the next steps leaving care service. So the first thing we were looking at is making sure that care leavers had safe, suitable accommodation, and we were doing that through developing a joint protocol with housing needs team. And we're in
Interrupt, but I still haven't got the presentation.
No, I haven't either.
Nor me.
Do you have it now?
No.
Hang on a second.
Oh, yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, it's coming up now. It's here now.
Are you seeing just the one screen? Because unfortunately I'm on two screens. So can you just see the slide presentation?
No, it's just your home screen we can see. Oh, it's coming up.
There.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got
Right.
it now.
Right then, there we go. From the beginning.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, so can you move on to the next slide? Right, so our first point was to ensure young people leaving care are placed in safe, suitable and secure accommodation through improving housing pathways. We were looking at a joint protocol with housing needs team, and that's currently in draft form. We had a meeting earlier in the week, so we're working with that. Improved joint working between personal advisors and our 16+ accommodation team. That's up and running. We now have regular meetings between the next steps team manager and the housing 16+ accommodation team manager. And we're looking at other ways of being able to meet accommodation needs, such as looking at supported lodging provision, taster flats for young people. So there's quite a bit of work going there. The next thing is facilitating a seamless transfer to adulthood for young people, and this is about our relationship with the children in care team, and we're having regular meetings with the team managers from the children in care teams. There's a transfer protocol in place which is working well, and we're starting to pick children in care up and doing some joint work at the age of 16. Then if young people in our service are wanting additional support from adult services, we're working through their protocols to agreeing a pathway for young people that have additional needs that would need some transition into adult services. And also we're aware of the pathway into adult safeguarding.
Excuse me, Anne, I think there might be a problem in terms of everybody being able to hear you.
Right.
Are you able to position yourself differently by the computer? And if not, I could try and take over if the sound quality is better from myself.
Is that any better?
No difference. Okay.
Hello, with regard to the actual presentation, Tony, can you press at the top button from current slide? It will enlarge the presentation so that people will be able to read it.
From the beginning.
From current slide, the one to the right of there.
Oh, it's like. Has that made any difference at all? It hasn't, has it?
No.
No. Yes.
How far did we get on, and is it worth it? Would you like me to take over?
Yeah.
I think your sound is a bit clearer, Tony. If that's
Okay. And obviously, Anne, if you want to step in.
I will do.
I can't get my screen for it to move across onto this. So is it better to go back and do the slide presentation as it was?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's not made much difference.
No, it hasn't, has it? Unless I send it through to you. Right, okay, so how far did you get on in terms of being able to hear the presentation? Did we get through this slide?
I was about halfway through the first slide, I'm not sure.
Right, so if I take over, in terms of the next steps team, we have 2 implementation plans. One's an operational one, and then one is more strategic. So in terms of the implementation plan, phase 1, as Anne was just talking about, we're actually working very hard in terms of looking at young people leaving care and their accommodation needs. That's really moving at a pace in terms of working with housing colleagues to make sure that our children in care are able to be given priority and able to source accommodation in the Wakefield area. We're already on in terms of a joint protocol with housing colleagues, and that is in draft and should be completed within the next 2 to 3 weeks and signed off. We also have colleagues that attend our tracking meeting for our 16 plus young people and our care leavers, where we talk about individual young people and we look at the best accommodation that we can possibly find for them in the Wakefield area or even out of area, and housing colleagues attend that meeting. And I think more specifically what's happened there is we've actually built relationships with colleagues in housing where now on an individual case-by-case basis they join in terms of discussions when we may have challenges around accommodation. And we know that this is one of the priority areas that Ofsted did raise when they came and did the monitoring visit. We've also got a 16 plus accommodation team that hold their own housing accommodation, and it's really good in terms of step on accommodation. If Mark was here, he'd be able to talk a bit more about it. But what they have is they have intensive support workers who also work alongside young people that are in their accommodation. And what we've done is we've really strengthened that connection with the 16 plus accommodation team, so that with the personal advisor and the intensive support worker, we have a really clear plan for each young person in terms of the intensive support required to enable that young person to successfully move on into adulthood. And then we're obviously doing more work around looking at the housing stock and accommodation to make sure it meets our young people's needs. And there's a lot of work that Cheryl's progressing around that to ensure we have suitable and adequate accommodation for our care leavers. In terms of facilitating transition into adulthood for young people, we know that's been a challenge and also has been raised by Ofsted in the past. And we've been working really closely with the Children in Care team, because there are 2 specific teams within the Children in Care team who work with young people. And from the ages of 16 upwards, we've now been able to co-allocate a personal advisor from the Next Steps team. And in terms of a personal advisor from the Next Steps team, co-working along with the social worker in the Children in Care team, and working together to make it so it's a seamless transition into the Next Steps team when they reach the age of 18. That's working extremely well, and there's really positive feedback from young people in terms of how that's working. We're working with adult services to make sure we've got a smooth transition into adult services, both in terms of adult services and safeguarding, and adult services when there are additional needs, for example, mental health. And you'll hear Michaela and some of the colleagues talk about that further in their presentations of work, in terms of work around that. That's still work in progress, but we're also finding now that we're able to have individual case-by-case discussions and case planning meetings with key colleagues in adult services. And again, that's now starting to make a difference for each young person where we're having those individual case discussions. In terms of enhancing the role of the person advisor, to go back to that, this is around, this is enhancing the person advisor model, which builds on, some of you would have heard the conversation, the sessions that we had with Jan's team, which used to be the Edge of Care team. And what we're wanting to do is, we're very aware that for our young people, our care leavers, when they leave, become 18, we really need to strengthen their support networks around them, not just in terms of their family, but also their friendship groups as well. So we really build on their support networks to actually have a really good supportive plan wrapped around them from the age of 18 onwards, so that they're able to draw on those sources of support, because quite often they may find that they don't have as many professional networks of support around them at that time. So we're working with that, but what we've also done is we're rolling this back to actually start from the age of 17. So with our colleagues in Children in Care, we're identifying the young people to take this forward in terms of the project. And then we're going to set up family group conferencing and family network meetings where we actively have a support plan in place that draws on other people from the ages of 17 upwards. I don't know if there's any questions, please just chip in if there are. So that's something that we'd really like to report back on, because it's called Beyond the Person Advisor Model, and it recognises that a person advisor shouldn't be the only person in that young person's life when they reach adulthood. Supporting care leavers in terms of their education, employment and training. This is something that was also referred to by Ofsted in terms of becoming really aspirational for our care leavers and supporting them. And we're actually doing a lot of work around clinics and support for our care leavers. We're also on the NEAT strategic board that has opened up fantastic opportunities to work with other colleagues as a team around our care leavers. And we've also now been able to set up what we call NEAT clinics, where we're talking about each individual young person who is actually not in employment, education or training, and with other colleagues and other partners actually talk about them and look around what wraparound support we may be able to provide to them to try and enable them to actually achieve their ambitions and to try and get them either back into education, but more specifically for quite a lot of them, encourage them to be able to attend apprenticeships as well. So that's going extremely well. We had our first clinic and we were able to talk about several young people, and we have some really good plans in place supported by the Employment Hub as well. We finalised the Leaving Care offer. We've got the website, and I know Rich will talk about that later. It's a fantastic website designed by young people for young people. And within that, yesterday we were talking about how we also then connect some live skill sessions training for our young people that they can access through the Care for Us website using Facebook, Zoom sessions. And we're going to launch that hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And it would be really good if we could come back and talk about what we're doing around that. Ensure care leavers have access to good quality healthcare and emotional well-being. I'm not going to go into too much detail because Michaela will be talking about this, but this is something again that Ofsted have made reference to, and it's more significant and more relevant at the moment in terms of COVID and the impact of emotional health and well-being on our care leavers. And we really wanted to strengthen the offer, and Michaela will talk about that in more detail in her presentation. So in terms of the rest of the implementation plan, we're also looking at enabling caregivers to develop independent skills. We had high ambitions for this to be face-to-face. Obviously then with COVID, this has restricted our ability to be able to deliver this. But we've had some meetings with colleagues in comms, and we're now going to be able to start this work in the next 2 weeks, where we're doing it through a Facebook site, link to the Care for Us website, Zoom sessions, and it was quite exciting in terms of the platforms we'll be able to deliver this on, rather than just doing face-to-face. We will still be doing some face-to-face, but in obviously a COVID-safe way, so it won't be delivered to as many young people. And this other platform means we can reach all our care leavers. Enhance the capacity through implementing a new structure. That's taken place. We've strengthened the capacity in the Next Steps team in recognition that we want to do more intensive work with our young people in preparation for independence. We've also had two senior person advisors are now in post, and they work with our young people in transition from the children in care team, but they also work with some of the more complex young people, because it's recognised that even though from the age of 18 upwards we do have some real complex, some young people with real complex needs, and they work together and provide support to the PAs in the team. And that's working really well alongside the team manager. So it's really not only strengthening capacity, but strengthening the quality of practice as well. Then also making sure that opportunities are available for care leavers in terms of their ability to influence service delivery. And Richard will be talking about that, but they're really instrumental in everything that we're doing, even down to writing policies and procedures. We're asking for their input and support around that. And what's been really good is they've been helping in terms of the recruitment and interviews. And we've also set up a free telephone number, which is something that they asked for, so that they can have contact with the Next Steps team whenever they need it through the free phone number. So the next bit is achieve consistently high standards of work carried out by leavers through good quality supervision and management oversight. That's been strengthened by the personal advisor role. We've got some bespoke training happening with the Learning Academy. We've got specific training happening, and we're also improve the quality of supervision. And we're also going to be doing dip sampling, not just of supervision records, but a variety of different activities that we do, for example, pathway plans, risk assessments, chronologies, so that we make sure that we know ourselves really well. And that's actually being done by a colleague called Jenny Smith and her part of the team in terms of the quality improvement. And that actually then feeds into our continual improvement plan. So we know areas where we need to develop, and that she will then focus in and support us to actually improve practice if we need to. Obviously, there's some more information there in terms of review of the workforce development and caseload. So we've reviewed caseloads are appropriate. We've got induction plans, training plans in place for new person advisors. We had 2 new person advisors start on the 6th of January, had their own induction. We're also looking at setting up what we call group peer supervision, so that we facilitate sessions where we discuss complex cases to try and problem solve the best ways to actually try and support that care leaver. And also person advisors now do have protected time to make sure that everything's up to date and tasks are completed within timescale. And to be fair, the performance of the service is extremely good, with no concerns about compliance. Right, ensure support to care leavers is ready, available and consistent through a review of the workforce development caseloads. That's something that I've mentioned. We're making sure that we're dip sampling the work. We're monitoring in terms of timescales to make sure that we're compliant and consistent, reporting back to the performance board that we're actually achieving above and beyond what we'd expect in terms of timescales, and being able to drill down where things might be drifting or delaying. And very clearly, what's very evident, and we had some feedback from some audits that have just taken place, they're saying that the voice of the young person is very, very strong on case files in terms of pathway plans, and they're in terms of the grading of some of the audits that are taking place. We're seeing them nudging into requires improvement, and some also being recognised as good as well, which is extremely good in terms of such a short timescale to achieve such a change. Talking about the quality of pathway plans, again, that quality is improving. Voice of the young person is very evident, and they're driving their plans. Some of the things that we really want to focus on is keeping in touch with some of our hard to reach young people. We know that's a challenge, and it's really evident that there are a handful of young people where sometimes that can be quite difficult when they're choosing not to engage with us. So Anne's going to be working with some colleagues around how do we actually make sure we have a consistent approach, that even if that young person's saying, I don't want to be in contact with you, we're continually trying to find different ways to engage that young person. And also through COVID as well, we've actually learned from some of the local authorities in terms of their good practice, and we're making sure that we every 2 weeks or every week we're making contact with each care leaver, sure they're okay and they're feeling okay. And if they then say that they're not feeling so good or they're wobbling a little bit, we up the support during that week. And we're doing that on a weekly or a 2 weekly basis, depending on the request from that young person. I've already spoken about increased methods of communication and different platforms that we're using. And we're also reviewing the financial guidance to make sure that we're financially supporting young people appropriately, for example, when they go on to university. We've got a bespoke learning offer that has been tailored around the identified needs, both for the PAs and in terms of being able to meet the needs of young people. That's being delivered by a colleague from the Learning Academy, and that's going extremely well. And then obviously the audits will then tell us if that's making a difference. Strengthening work around chronologies, and I won't go into any more of this because this is basically everything that we've mentioned in terms of the work that we're doing just to strengthen the learning offer. We also have some areas of work that we know that we need to also provide additional support for a young person when they're over the age of 18. We do have quite a few young people who have moved from the Children in Care Service where we have a concern around CVE. And what we do now have is we have a linked CVE worker who is now working with some of our young people where that continues to be a concern into adulthood, and they're actually giving us the skills and the support and the advice in terms of working with those young people. And that's also now going to be taking place in terms of working with colleagues, an independent reviewing officer as well, and also some social workers remaining involved post-18 to help with the transition for some of the more complex and complicated young people, so that we really get the package of support right for them. And is there anything that I've missed in your presentation that you'd want to pick up on?
No, I think you've covered everything.
Right. Well, that's the end of the presentation. I think I've done I hope I've done justice and to the team and everything that they're doing. And you will also hear some of the other things being echoed by some of the other presentations today as well. I don't know if there are any questions.
Thank you, Tony, and for stepping in there. Thank you to Anne for putting that presentation together. If you just want to indicate in the chat if they have any questions, I just wanted to start off by just asking if you consider us to have any care leavers in unsuitable accommodation at the moment, and also in terms of the personal advisors, do we have enough given the numbers of care leavers?
Definition of unsuitable accommodation is interesting because one of the definitions of that would be, for example, prison. So yes, unfortunately, we do have a young person who is in prison. There are some young people where they may be in accommodation that we would like them to be in a different type of accommodation, but through their choice, that's where they would like to be, and we support them around that. And also, I think we've got real high aspirations, and I'm sure Cheryl would step in with this, real high aspirations to make sure that we end up with accommodation portfolio that's really varied and offers a great variety of different choices for our young people. And for anywhere where we may think that accommodation may not be ideal, we actively track that and we actively look at alternative accommodation as well. And anything you want to say around that in terms of accommodation?
No, just that, like you echoed, that there's work in place to look at alternative accommodations like supported lodgings, taster flats and things like that.
Yeah, and that's something that we keep on our radar, and Cheryl is very, very mindful of as well in terms of making sure everybody's in suitable accommodation. In terms of having enough PAs, we've been able to obviously increase the establishment of the Next Steps service in recognition of the increased caseload and also the level of support we want to be able to provide our young people. We are able to see their caseloads on a daily basis, and what we're finding is caseloads are absolutely manageable. And then also with the senior person advisors and also with the team manager, if at any point that does increase, then we look at how we can redistribute workload across the team. But caseloads are absolutely fine in terms of being able to provide the level of support that we need to for our young people. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for that, Tony. I've not had any members indicate that they wish to ask any further questions. So I'll just thank you again and say that, yes, I think we'd love to invite you back later in the year to have an update on how things are going.
That would be really good, because you can also talk about the Beyond Advisor, Person Advisor model, family group conferencing, and then we can also, when you hear Michaela's presentation, you'll also hear some of the stuff that Michaela's doing that we'd like to come back to talk to you about. Thank you.
Lovely, that's great. Thank you. Well, on that note, we will move on to item 8, which is a presentation by Michaela and I believe Andy Woodcock, and that's on the emotional wellbeing team and the CAMS offer. Okay, I hope you're both there and able to continue.
We are. We're actually together this morning. So morning, everybody. We're just hoping that we have the same problem in terms of sharing our slideshows. So we're just uploading that on share at the moment.
Can you see that screen? Morning, everybody, by the way. I'm Andy Woodcock.
Can everybody see that screen?
It's
Not yet.
No, there's nothing at the moment.
No, not yet.
No.
I hope we don't have the same problems.
It's okay, Michaela. If you want to, I can step in again. You can test my IT skills again.
Right.
Honestly, all these people that work for Wakefield Council and they've got no IT skills at all.
Cynthia, do you want to mute your microphone?
Yeah, just a minute.
Michaela, would you like me to share the presentation?
She's got a line through her phone, which means she's lost her connection, I believe.
Yeah. We may need to go back because I know that she's at Cam's office at the moment, so they might be having network problems.
Is it possible, Councillor Malkin, is Richard with us?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm all. Need me to step in.
I just wonder if it's worth swapping them around while we sort out the technical difficulties with Michaela, but I'll leave that to Councillor Malkin to decide.
That's fine if Richard's happy to go ahead at this point.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay, so we'll take item 9 then, children's voice and participation. Thanks, Richard.
Okay, just see if I can navigate it now. There we go. Slideshow. Okay, can you see what I can see?
Yes.
Yes.
Great stuff. Okay, so I've brought to the committee the participation report for the period that we had from April 18 to September 2020. So it doesn't reflect some of the work that we've been doing recently or completed recently, but I might sort of like make reference to that a little bit later in the future plans. Okay, so that's my role really, is to ensure participation of children and young people, and the idea being that as well as improving design and delivery of services, increasing confidence and self-esteem, a feeling of empowerment for children in care. So the groups we run now, I run in supported by a new management team. It used to be fostering that was my line management route, but now it's the youth team. And so the voice and influence coordinator, Elaine Armstrong, is my new supervisor, and that's brought lots of benefits. It means that I've now got a team to work, and I can pull on the support of the entire youth team with some of the things that we're doing, and that's led to some things that are in the pipeline about how we're going to improve the way that children in care are able to integrate into wider youth groups and wider opportunities within youth services. But they're supporting me as well now to run the following groups that you can see there. So we've got, and I'll just do a quick run through those in a moment. Okay, so during that period of time, the Children in Care Council juniors met up during school holidays and occasionally on evenings after school, and we've had some great times working in partnership with leisure services and with museum services and with the countryside officers to provide activity-based consultation sessions. The key part of this being that this is a social experience for a lot of our younger children in care, where they get a chance to go and meet other young people who are in similar situations to themselves, so they can share their experiences. But also then what they can do is they build friendships, and we know that we have young people who are 16 plus now who have known each other from KIC junior years, and they can remember having those shared experiences back then. So it's a really important thing about belonging and about having an opportunity to not worry about their status or what other people might think, or but then to be able to share their experiences as well. So we've done some great activities along with them, and they see their priorities as being enjoying school, feeling good about themselves and the environment. And in terms of enjoying school, what they did on one of the occasions recently, when schools were opening up again after the lockdown, the first lockdown, they did a young people's guide to going back to school and making the most of it, and they talked about designated teachers. Now young people can get support, and all that was shared on the Care for Us website. So if you get a chance to go and have a look at that, it's under the education section in the KIC juniors and KIC 11 to 18 section. We also have KIC, which is our main our main Children in Care Council. Now, we have had, over that period of time, 19 young people who've accessed that, and it's quite a representative group of young people. And we have young people who actually travel in from Huddersfield to come and be part of that group, and we provide that transport. But it means that young people are able to really dig into some of the things that are being offered by services, consult on that, but also have their own priorities. So these are their priorities in 2018 to 2020. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the things that came up of that, particularly around anti-bullying and emotional well-being, where they decided to join forces with wider youth groups because they felt that those two subjects were too big for children in care to tackle. It was a problem for all children in schools at the moment, all children online at the moment, so they needed that additional support. This year's priorities have gone really well. We're talking about adoption and its impact on brothers and sisters who are still in care, and more information to come on that, but we just recently met with the director of One Adoption, who sat down and looked at questions from the group. We've decided to a frequently asked questions section on Care for Us, but our KIC are now going to be involved in the regional redesign of the letterbox system, which is a system where children who are adopted are able to contact children who are still in foster care or still. So that's going to be great there. There's a lot of things where it's still back in the 20th century, and with social media and with email, there's a lot more things that can be done that haven't been put in place yet. So our young people are going to be integral in designing that new service. Their other priorities were interviewing staff and having information that's relevant for children in care. Now, we'll talk about interviewing a bit later, but the info for children in care has been a big piece of work. It's not quite completed as yet, but we've had the launch of the new Care for Us website, and most of the things are in place on there. Then we have the 16 Plus Forum. Their priorities are money, finance and budgeting, independence, education opportunities and barriers, housing and transitions from care, and socialising. And again, a lot of this is reflected in the work that they've done towards the Care for Us website. We had got a great plan of meeting up regularly and doing all sorts of activities during the course of the year, rather than just leaving it until Care Leavers Week this year. But obviously that got scuppered with COVID. However, we did still manage to meet in real life once the lockdowns had eased, to make sure that young people had got that chance to come and get together and support each other, because I think one of the loveliest parts of my work has been doing the 16 plus forums, which is the second Friday in every month, and it's a chance for everybody to sit down and eat a meal together. And I think I'd forgotten that as my children have grown up and started to move away, but actually sitting down and having a meal together is a lovely experience, and they've been a really supportive group to each other, and that actually continued during COVID, where they kept some young people kept a really tight group where they were meeting weekly, but we did have some drop off from young people who don't feel happy with social media or with any sort of internet meetings. So we've been trying to keep in touch with them by telephone and by talking to PAs, but it's been an interesting year for care leavers. I think one of the big problems being internet poverty, and that's something we've tried to address in a couple of ways. The 16 Plus Forum made a bid to try and get additional Wi-Fi, and there's been lots of movement and political sway across the country towards providing that support, and hopefully that's getting out there now to our 16 plus group. But that's something that we do need to keep a track on, because it's a very difficult decision whether or not you're going to be spending money on your Wi-Fi or whether or not you need to be looking at your next meals. And as we know, for care leavers all over the country, they have very little spare spend every week. The Care Leavers Week that we had last year was great. This is the one where we all met up in real life, and it culminated in a lovely meal where 35 young people came. Again, great friendships were made. I think that's what everybody's felt about that. So they had the chance, but they also talked about the new name for the service, the Leaving Care Service. So this is where they came up with the Next Steps name, and this is where they started the consultation on things that people have to do about the local offer and about Next Steps booklets and about the skills pack that's been provided as well, which are all about to be published or have been published recently. We've got one other little group that's been running, and that's the Foxes group. It's a group of young people who have an EHCP. We set this group up and we got a little bit of additional help from Bernardo's in the first instance and from the emotional wellbeing team, just to give a little bit more support. So for children who wouldn't necessarily be able to make their views understood or be able to interpret some of the information that we're trying to share, that they would have this opportunity to be able to talk. And that's still in development at the moment. And it's joined together with ACIC Juniors sometimes as well. And it's been a really great format. The running picture up at the top is a socially distanced sports event that we did in October, actually, that one was. And that was absolutely fabulous at Featherstone Sports Centre. And as you've probably heard, we've got a kid choir and a 16 plus music group, both of which have done some amazing things over the last couple of years, including perform at the Children and Young People's plan launch, the Achievement Awards, and then also the 16 plus Next Steps song. We're hoping to make into a single with a video and for that to go out, and that's still in development. But that's been played in the Wakefield music group. It's been shared across the country with that. And it's been a really lovely piece of work for everybody. And as our counsellors will know, we've been working with the corporate parenting panel over the last couple of years to try and develop working relationships where young people and adults feel comfortable working together to try and work through things that are important for young people. And it's been a really powerful thing. That first picture there where we've got a young person speaking with a yogurt pot telephone to a different group. So we worked out that sometimes you have different camps and you have different priorities in different camps, and it can be quite difficult to bridge that gap. But what young people came up with is developing a system where young people actually deliver training to counsellors when they come and meet them, and you work together on things, and it's provided really lovely opportunities where young people have said, I can't wait to see which counsellors come in. Counsellors have said, I can't wait to see which kids are coming. And that's quite a change from being stuck in a stuffy council building where young people are a bit overawed by everything to actually feeling comfortable to go there and excited about going. Some of the other activities that we've been doing are the Achievement Awards, task and finish groups, interviewing, training, foster care conference, which took place in 2019. It was a real success, where we had young people actually part of the delivery of emotional wellbeing groups about achieving in schools and aspirations in school, and about life story work. And we've also started with young people development training, because we've got a lot of young people who've got really skilled up, but we do need to give them that extra support so that they've got the confidence to be able to do the interviewing and the training for adults. So we had 2 celebration of achievement awards, and we had over 250 young people recognised in those. And the celebration of achievements awards in November had to be postponed, and we're hoping that that's going to happen in June. With fingers crossed. It was going to happen in April, but that's not going to happen, I don't think now. But we're hoping that June we're going to do it, and if not, we're going to actually try and get that as an online awards. Although we do recognise that getting online is quite a bit of a struggle for young people in care, particularly when it's around social sites, and there's things and barriers that we may need to break down about that. But one way or another, we're going to have some sort of a celebration of achievement awards. This year, the young people have nominated their theme as being famous people. So we're expecting all council members who are going to attend to get dressed up as their favourite celebrity icons. And a great piece of work that they've done this year is look at the Care For Us website, which has become really outdated. And we've talked quite a bit about this already with councillors, but it's become something, and one of the things that really sort of is quite interesting is those statistics there that in that period of 2.5 months, 423 individual users used it for 781 seconds. But having an average viewing time of 4 minutes means that they're really sticking to it and going through and looking at different pages. And so hopefully the information that's in there, which has been separated off into 4 to 11s, 11 to 18 care leavers, is hopefully hitting that mark, and I'll be able to give better breakdowns about that as we go through the course of this next year, because with the statistics we'll be able to pick out what people are actually looking at. Right, so 12 young people have been involved in interviewing over the course of the last couple of years. We've been involved in I think most of the Mockingbird post, which has been a really useful experience, because it's given the people who are becoming employed or have been employed a chance to listen to what young people think about it. And we've made a big point of talking about what they would like from that Mockingbird system. And the ongoing work is going to be with that, is that we're going to be working with Kate and with Krista in the Mockingbird team to help support the development of their own young people's group. So we'll be going in with young people who are experienced in participation, and then going in and supporting those groups to develop over next year. Yeah, and those are some of the other posts that we've been interviewing for. It's been a very empowering thing where we've had young people actually phoning up and offering the jobs on the telephone at the end, and that's been really exciting and an important thing for the young people. They've really felt as if they've had something to say, and they've been listened to. One of the real success stories is the young people training courses that we're doing, where the young people actually training workers. The designated teacher training went down really well, and it highlighted how even for designated teachers, understanding what's going on for children in care is quite difficult. And it led to the teachers themselves actually going back to their school and delivering this training that we had given alongside their own children in care, which opened up other teachers' eyes. So teachers who had been struggling with children in class were suddenly able to have training to deliver to them, and they couldn't believe it. How come you can behave like this with me now? And it helps them to look at their practice and the way that they were providing their support, and to break down those barriers. That developed into the challenging stereotypes training, which has been delivered to over 120 colleagues from the Young People's Partnership Board, so people in health and police, and we've had educational psychologists. We've got a group of psychologists from the South West Yorkshire Trust who just to their team. Our participation voices training this year is going to be delivered as mandatory training for AYSEs, so that's happening in March, and we've got a full course again in April as well. I think in May as well. The preparation to fostering has been continuing online as we've gone through the pandemic, and that's a really great piece of work that young people do, where they involved in the assessment of initial foster care applicants, and so they're able to vet them a little bit, check what they think about them, talk about their suitability as foster carers, what they need to work on in terms of the relationship building skills with young people. What we do in real life is the young people get together, make some baked potatoes and beans, and then everybody sits down to dinner together before the actual training starts and gets to know each other. And we've got another training session for next week. And today we've got a young person who's working with Leeds Beckett Uni. He's also done that before, where he's working with initials, first-year students at Leeds Beckett, providing them with case study experience. And he's also done like a clinic, a young person's clinic, where he's talked about some of the issues that face children in care. So that's really powerful work that our young people are doing, where they've developed and designed their own training, and it reflects current things that are going on for them. So, for example, participation and voices will talk about Care for Us this time. It'll talk about that challenging stereotypes training, but it'll also draw on the learning from the other things where the young people can bring it back. They design their own courses, and I support them to deliver them then to our professionals, making a real impact, and the feedback has been absolutely astonishing. And this is what's happened. Our young people are experts. We've had 3 young people apply to the Children's Commissioner for the independent review for care services, and had really, really powerful applications for that. We're supporting them by developing training for them, which is supported with Young Lives, and it's supported by the youth team, and also we're developing links with the NCS, who are developing some of our training programs, particularly around equality, diversity training and interviewing. And the young people really enjoy that. The idea being that we're moving towards young people who are able to pay a mentor in a supported way online, and that's what we're looking at, working with North Yorkshire Children in Care Council to do a joint young people's mentoring session, and that's in the pipeline. So our children in care have become involved in the wider youth groups. They've developed the emotional wellbeing group, who a couple of weeks ago met up with the manager of CAMS to talk about what services are being provided. We have an anti-bullying group who's working to develop an anti-bullying policy which young people take to schools to adopt. So it's young people saying, we want, when we're bullied, we want to know what happens as a result, and it not to be a passive experience for the person who's being bullied, but also recognises that bulliers, the people who are bullying, need support as well. So they're doing some work around that. We had a young person, or for the last 2 years, the Build Our Futures Forum was hosted by a child who was in care, and they did an amazing job. And both times, both forums were represented brilliantly by children in care, and really frank about their experiences of COVID and about what they think is important for Wakefield. And young people have been involved in the improvement journey group. So we've had 3 members of our children, 3 children in care, who've been doing mystery shopping at the front door services for MASH and for ringing up Social Care Direct to offer scenarios, and that's been a really powerful and empowering thing, which is going to continue as a mystery shopping group. We've been involved in the launch of the young people, the Children and Young People's Plan, where the anti-bullying video got shown, and young people were able to consult around the key issues that face children in Wakefield. And one of our young people has become a full member of the Children and Young People's Partnership Board. This is unprecedented that we've got a child who's actually a member of an adult board, and that's already proved good. It's a polite challenge, but also a young person working alongside adults to try and support Wakefield Council and its partners to improve services for children and young people. So this is what Ofsted at their last visit, and they actually met up with a group of young people in care and the young people who work in the wider groups. And our future, Minding My Own app is up and running now. We need to improve young people's access to that. We need to make sure that all workers supporting young people to sign up for a Minding My Own app and to send a wellbeing statement through to their social worker or workers, so we can get a picture of where for young people there, but also pick out what's the conditions for individual children and the whole cohort of children in care. We're looking at doing a fun day in July if everything opens up, and we've got all that in. It's all sort of in its initial stages of planning, but as soon as we get the go ahead for that, we're hoping to have a fun day. Young people have worked on this year's Achievements Awards, and we're consulting on that tomorrow so that the paperwork's going to go out. So in the next couple of weeks, all workers should be receiving a nomination form for children in care. We're going to complete this year's priorities and tidy all that up and reflect that on Care for Us. We'll also then decide next year's and support that Mockingbird Young People Forum. And hopefully make it so that we can all meet together again, because that's the thing that the young people really get the most out of it, is being there together with friends that make, trying to make a difference for all children in care. Thank you.
Brilliant, Richard. Thank you so much for that. I think it's so impressive, the range of work, the amount of work, and just the commitment from the young people. Absolutely fantastic. I've got Jackie Spate wanting to comment.
Yeah, pretty much the same as you, Chair. I wanted to comment out on how interesting it was, first of all, to read the report, and then just as interesting to hear it presented. There's lots and lots of activity there, lots of things going on with young people, and it's great to hear, but also some very serious issues within it. Just to name one, the designated teacher training, which is really going to add a lot of value, I think. So that's just one thing that I would comment on. But the other is that I'd like to say I was pleased to see that future priorities include the impact of adoption on siblings, because I know at the very fun session that we had with the young people at Christmas, which had many of us racing around the house to find various objects, there was a serious side as well, and that did come out as an issue, which I'll be honest, it made me think about it for quite a long time afterwards. So I'm pleased to see that is there as a priority, because clearly that has come from the young people themselves. So I'm really delighted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. They found it really interesting when they met up with Sarah Johal from One Adoption to find out, because for them, they didn't understand how many children were being adopted, how many young people were in care who'd got siblings there. And it turns out that just 3 young people in our Children in Care Council have got sisters or brothers who are just about to be adopted, who they might not see again until they're 30 years old. And you can just imagine what impact that would have on anybody, knowing that they're not going to see a little sister until they're in the mid-30s. So yeah, it's a really powerful piece of work again, isn't it? And I think we're sort of quite hopeful that our young people are going to be able to make a difference with that by sharing that information, making sure it's available for other children in care, not just in Wakefield, but across the country.
Yeah, it's unimaginable. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Jackie. And just Joy has commented about the voice of the kids being absolutely everywhere, which is great to hear. I think we'd all agree with that. Councillor Loughran, you have a question?
Yeah, I could just really feel the energy coming out, Richard. It was great, and it's a total change in the culture of social services from not that long ago, actually, when I think the voice of young people just wasn't heard at all, really. So I think it's congratulations to everybody involved in doing that and all the different initiatives. I was just wondering, have you found there are many barriers for some young people joining in with some of this, and could you name what they might be?
I think capacity is a barrier. I mean, capacity is a barrier because in order to get young people to meetings, they need a lot of support. And so what we found with some groups over the course of the year in the wider community is that to say, right, we've got a meeting coming up at 3 o'clock on Thursday isn't enough. You need to be ringing them up and talking to them and supporting them to be there. Because like all of us, our time's valuable, isn't it? And we have other things competing for time. And for young people at the moment, we're doing a lot of their work online. And so the idea of then having a meeting after they've finished all the schoolwork online is a real barrier for them. So they've really got to feel invested to be able to take part and want to take part. In terms of the whole children in care community, for children in care, the Children in Care Juniors set up an online game session. They'd been practicing with it and playing silly games like we did with Jackie at Christmas, where they were running around the house or playing charades and things like that. And I wanted to do it for children in care. So we actually advertised it to all children, all kid juniors, so all young people under 11 years old, and we didn't get any response. And that's quite, it was sort of quite upsetting for the young people, really. But part of that is about people feeling comfortable to go online and to share things online. And I think for foster care, even more concern about their young people being online than there is for parents having their children online, because they're looking after children on other parents' behalf, aren't they? So that's one of them. But really, I think if we could have another 3 or 4 people as well who were able to go out and build those relationships, and for as for our new social work team as our next sector, to be actually going out there and supporting those young people to come into the groups and to meet up with us, that'd make a real difference. And our next steps have changed the way that we work at the moment now, so that two members of Next Step staff are actually going to come and attend each 16+ forum and actually bring new young people in. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's having that security to know that you're coming in and somebody's there to support you if you need, because it's a big scary thing if not.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Do we have any other questions or comments? If not, thank you once again, Richard, and thanks for shuffling up the agenda. Much appreciated, and for the great comprehensive report. We'll move on now, if we're able, back to item 8, which is the emotional wellbeing team. Are we okay to go with that item now?
Yeah, Tony's massive apologies. I actually even got thrown out of the chat. Tony's going to load up the presentation for us, and we'll talk to the presentation. Hopefully you'll all be able to see it in a moment. And it's going to be a fair to follow Richard's amazing presentation anyway. So, okay.
Can everybody see that?
Yeah, that's great.
I'm struggling to hear. I don't know about anybody else.
I think if Andy's talking, we can't hear him, unfortunately.
Have we lost signal again? Michaela? Andrew? Am I on? Tony?
We can hear you.
I can hear you, Cheryl.
Yeah,
I'm just checking.
Looks like we've lost Michaela again.
Yeah, I think we have, haven't we?
If you can just give me a moment, let me just see if I can link him again.
Thank you.
It's just not working.
She should be back. I believe you're back, aren't you, Andy?
I'm back. Yeah, we just haven't got the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we're having massive technical problems. Sorry.
Can we hear Andrew?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
So sorry about that. So I think we were talking about the first 2 slides. What did we manage to You managed to hear that? In terms of the mission statement.
Cells again.
Start again.
Please, yeah.
Hear us?
Okay. Here is now.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
okay.
just a couple of slides. We were just talking about, yes, as our our joint pathway, the emotional wellbeing team and the enhanced outreach team, and we wanted to start just by talking a little bit about our sort of joint ethos in terms of mission statement. So we're looking at working together using a trauma and attachment approach to improve the emotional and mental health outcomes of children and young people in care, and those with an offending or forensic type presentation. If you can, then we'll on to next slide, please, Tony. Slide 3.
Are we all able to see slide 3?
Is it the one that says content on it? The Ofsted?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. On that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to a little bit about, because we've never spoken never presented the journey from the beginning to the end of where we're up to at the moment before. So we thought we'd just give a little bit of context behind it, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, but we just wanted to review it really. So following our Ofsted inspection and the findings in the report in 2018, it became very clear around the areas that were needed to be improved across the local authority and all partner agencies. And I guess more for me and Andy, in terms of our focus, it was looking at placement stability. So we were looking at the findings: too many children have experienced placement instability, children not always living in suitable and stable placements, and more importantly, not enough local skilled foster carers to meet those children's needs. This was having an inevitable impact upon the unsettlement and instability of children and young people, and more importantly, their emotional and mental well-being. So not just for younger children, but also for care leavers, emotional and mental health support services across Wakefield were not adequate because they weren't meeting these needs. It was clearly outlined that there was a lack of capacity in the emotional wellbeing service at that time for children in care and care leavers, unacceptable long waiting lists for specialist child and adolescent mental health service support, and that the lack of these support areas contributed to instability, carers not feeling equipped and skilled to be able to support the needs of the children continuing to experience trauma post coming into care. And we've done it as a circular because the cycle repeats. So following Ofsted, we were all aware that there needed to be a transformation of services, and we entered an improvement journey with an improvement plan to look at trying to make sure that we not only strengthen but really redesign these service areas so that they were adequate and met children and young people's needs across the whole of Wakefield district. And we've just added a little bit of a quote in there from Sam Cook, which you're probably all familiar with. A change is going to come that we all welcomed and we all thought was necessary. We're not playing the tune, you'll be glad to hear. We're just moving on to a little bit of the next steps for us. So for us, it was really important not just to know what Ofsted was saying, and not just to knowing ourselves the picture and what needed to improve, but also to look at nationally, local statistical neighbours, to be able to go out there and look at what's on offer, good and other areas of improvement, and also research into what would be the best way of moving forward, so we create and redesign these services to meet the needs of children and young people across the council. So One of the key pieces of research that we came across is the one in the first paragraph, which talks about children in care are 4 times more likely to experience poor emotional well-being, mental health compared to children living with their birth families. And I think by the virtue of the fact that we know that the children, young people, not only have the trauma experiences and difficulties whilst living with family members, but being, whatever has happened, being separated from those family members, being placed with what would be strangers, with a whole ream of new adults coming around you, wanting to know about you, making you go along to appointments, having to potentially move school, not being with your siblings, creates more trauma for these children in their life journeys. It was key, all key documents that I read or looked into, and guidance, especially the Department of Education and Department of Health in 2015, clearly outlined that in order to provide good quality services in these areas and start to try and repair some of that trauma and start to try and work with carers in a therapeutic manner, that we have highlighted there's a need for local authorities and health services to work together and provide these services. This isn't a us problem, it's a we, everybody has to work together in order to make sure that the service provisions are of a good quality, but also that they cover all areas. Additionally, given the above, it was imperative that children in care should have the right to support that they need at the earliest opportunity. So not waiting for a crisis situation to arise or a placement to disrupt or a child to end up in A&E, but as soon as professionals or carers or anybody as teachers were spotting those signs for the earliest opportunity, those young people were able to access those service offers. And that was really key for me to think about when redesigning my team. The emotional impact upon foster carers isn't always thought about neither, which became very clear to me. And some, thinking about the carers in terms of being very human, having their own problems sometimes going on, family issues, bringing their own birth family into this career. And there are times that triggers, from children's behaviours or children they're caring for can very much lead to carers not offering the quality of care that they would like to. And what we looked at there was, in order to model appropriate parenting, empathy and implementing strategies, there needed to be good quality care. And in order to provide good quality care and stable and secure placements, carers needed to be supported in the right manner. The only way that carers can build good connected and trusted relationships with our children is if they're supported around that too. So it's recognised nationally that there is a need for local authorities to provide foster carers and caregivers, because we're talking about residential staff, connected carers, with good quality training and specialist support to help them understand and address the needs of the children that they're trying to offer their support to. And that was from the Fostering Network 2017 document.
We offer the service between both teams. Both teams offer emotional, behavioural and mental health provision for children in care and their foster carers and caregivers and the professional team around them. So it's really important as a service that we're offering that approach to young people in our care. So we're offering within that is consultation, assessment and interventions. They're often trauma informed, along with training and advice. So in doing so, we envisage that children and young people should receive a more timely service, that Michaela mentioned earlier, with an appropriate assessed level of interventions and ongoing support provided for everyone involved in the day-to-day care of them young people. So we're looking at, the reason why we do this is to sort of avoid unwanted placement breakdowns. And similar to what Michaela said, it's very preventative. So we're not, wanting to be there to prevent crisis, and as well as putting wrap around care in terms of really intense safety planning for us young people. Also from a CAMS perspective as well, the enhanced outreach team, we do take on cases that may be young people presenting with forensic type presentations, and this behaviour needs to be sought in amongst other mental health difficulties such as developmental trauma, where there's a degree of complexity and a chronic presentation of maybe the young person demonstrating and externalising behaviours such as harmful sexualised behaviour or other forensic type presentations. And we would sort of work with a young person like we would do with a young person who's presenting with self-harm and suicidal type behaviours. So we'd be sort of approaching it very similar in trying to support that young person holistically. And again, it's very preventative, that strategy. And for us, we need to make sure that if the forensic type presentation is, the young person's actively criminal, we've got good links with our forensic CAMS to help with that process and specialist assessment.
So what did we do? We came together based on all that information and worked on and produced a Children and Young Persons Joint Agency Pathway. And that's a document that is continuously reviewed. It's a start and it's an outline of our service criteria and what we're hoping to achieve. The aim of the paper is to outline the roles of the enhanced outreach team and the emotional wellbeing team and the offers that we have in terms of being an interface team as a partnership and delivering fully good quality emotional wellbeing and mental health support for children, young people, carers. The pathway is designed to support children in care or children who have complex mental health needs, including our looking at the care levers. And as Tony spoke about earlier, there's a lot of work going on in that area at the moment. And in doing so, we've actually separated the document into a further document. So it mirrors the one that is on the screen, but it's specifically labelled for care levers. And it has slightly other criteria in there around transitional support, especially looking at transitional support into adult services and strengthening our evidence base there, so that we start to work with our partners in adult services to make sure children are left beyond 18 without that provision, especially as we know once they become 18 they're still children, and as such will still need support as any other young person would, and if not more so, because those can be the most scariest times of our life. We're also we'll come on to talk about that a little bit more, but we are looking at that in terms of working with the Next Steps team and offering consultation and support at the moment to PAs on a case-by-case basis, so that we are making sure that the plans in place for our young people match with their needs, and if any additional support that's required, that we are trying to work with PAs and our partner agencies to make sure those young people receive support, especially in mental health and emotional wellbeing. So that document is separate, and it is going to be looking at these areas, and it will be also looking at drop-in sessions for 16 plus young people, whereby they can come along and just talk about anything that's really worrying them in terms of impacting on their emotional, mental wellbeing, behavioural presentation. And it will also look at a self-referral pathway, because we have to acknowledge a lot of our young people live in semi-independent or post-18 independent living, and it's really difficult and it's really tough to be able to know when you're going to need a referral or not, at least if they have the option of calling and having a chat with somebody, and then potentially making a referral that way. It's a quicker, it's earlier for somebody to make that referral for you, and also it's somebody listening to their voice and acknowledging their wishes and feelings in terms of them taking control of their own well-being. So the document in itself as well, so we've got the two documents now. The second one I just spoke about is still in development, but is very much being used. So the enhanced outreach team has been functional since the April 2019, and the emotional wellbeing team as a redesigned team with processors, increased capacity, a strengthened and increased offer has been in place since June 2019 and went live from May 2020. So it describes the referral processes for both teams and the way into each other's team and the forensic teams. It also talks about the consultation offer that Andy was speaking about earlier, and we do offer consultations to carers, all professionals including social workers. We offer monthly consultations to the residential homes in Wakefield, and we offer consultations to schools and any other professional that feel they're involved in the care planning of our children and would benefit from that support. We offer, as part of our process, an assessment of therapeutic need, which is really needed key to start off with, so that we holistically pull all the information together about that young person, their journey, the professionals involved, and we look at holistically what they will need, not just from our service, but then we move on to work around the child, so that we are not trying to do this on our own, because when you've just worked with a carer or a child previously without the team around them being involved in the intervention plan, that we usually get repeat referrals, and that for us we're trying to avoid. And we're trying to also help to upskill our workforce across the council so that we all work in a trauma way with therapeutic knowledge, so that we can, for instance, social workers can go in and continue the therapeutic message and support during their visits. Supervising social workers can work alongside us to make sure that they're offering therapeutic parenting support to carers in between our sessions and when we pull out. So it's a holistic, multi-systemic way of working that should prevent further referrals that aren't necessary. We also look at the specialist assessments from the EAP and CAMS point of view. It's a smoother, quicker transition between both teams to ensure those happen for children and young people. Historically, we know there was long waiting lists. Children weren't receiving assessments at the right time by the right people, and now we can say from evidence that that's happening much quicker, and children and young people are getting, for instance, psychological assessments or referrals into the autism or any further assessments in a much more timely manner. We've got it covers therapeutic interventions and support we offer, and we offer a vast range of creative methods, but also where workers are trained in, for instance, therapy, EMDR, all different types of therapeutic intervention offer. What we try to do is change the language, because we don't want this to be clinical for carers and young people. We want them to know what their plans involve. So in doing so, we want to use language that means something to them. So for instance, therapy is working with the carer and the child in a playful manner to help them build a connected relationship. It's much simplistic a language than some of the documents. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to really use all the tools, training, expertise amongst the two teams to be able to dip in and out rather than use one model of work, and share that resources, practice with other professionals to ensure that we help upskill their practice and give them tools to also go out and use. Transitional support we just spoke about, so we're involved in a lot of transitional support with the 16+, but we also do transitional support for children and young people of all ages, including children who are placed within Wakefield, and unfortunately, if it is the right decision for that child to have to move to a placement outside of the Wakefield district, we will continue to work with that child on a transitional basis to help make sure we don't just leave them. We go with them, we assist them, we work with the new care team so that they have a good understanding of the child and what works for them, and we try and help the social worker and the professionals find a local resource or challenge on behalf, if we have to make sure that we don't leave these children without services that they need. The team structures, roles and responsibilities. We'll introduce you to the team in a slide later on. And training, supervision and peer support is really outlined in the document, especially training across the council that we will be offering, and our new offer 2021 covers that in areas such as fostering services. Supervision for our workers is key, and we're looking at peer support models because we're, especially during COVID, it can be quite a lonely time without your whole team around you doing this type of work. So we've had to make sure that we build in looking after our teams as well as other people. I'm not going to go on too much about the next slide. It kind of speaks for itself, but the document explains partners' contributions, roles and responsibilities within the pathway, including the single point of access for all referrals. Previously, we had different single points of access for referrals, which was leading to confusion about which children each service was working with, not knowing the numbers, and the data wasn't always accurate. There could be multiple services working with one child, but not being the right service and the right person at the right time. And now we've streamlined that so that the emotional wellbeing team is the single point of access for all referrals for children in care, unless it comes through a crisis pathway, which would then filter down to the outreach team and would then be fed into our weekly joint meetings that we have, where we share information about Wakefield children. So we should be talking about the same children the whole way through, and the confusion around who's working with what child, which team they sit in shouldn't happen. We do still have the ones whereby referrals come through from GPs or referrals come through from other sources, but the CAMS SPA team are very good at sending that through to the emotional wellbeing team if it's not an urgent referral, for us to then triage that referral and bring it to the weekly meeting for a shared discussion. All aware of the children and what's happening for them. Just to point out as well, it is a document that we've produced that is more for partner agencies and for staff working within the teams as a reference point. We have produced separate leaflets, separate profile sheets, child-friendly sheets, carer-friendly sheets and professional leaflets, so that they're much more simplistic. They don't talk about performance measures and data. In fact, the emotional wellbeing team's sheet for children and young people is actually a sheet with our photos on, and it talks a little bit about us as people. For instance, mine talks about me liking to go for walks on the beach, and nice things that children want to know about you before they meet you, or would make us more appealable in terms of children, so we're human, and they get to know us a little bit before they meet us or during. So we have got separate publication for those areas, and the document has been through a thorough quality assurance checking process through our Learning Academy, and it's been looked at in terms of restorative language, it's been looked at in terms of the process and the timescales, the data collection. So every area is being scrutinised by quality assurance partners, and before we agreed it as a final document, which is pleasing for me. This document's reviewed 6 monthly, so we will update it, make sure that any strengthened areas of offer or any new areas that we think need to be implemented will be added. However, we also revisit it, me and Andy, bi-monthly, because we have a bi-monthly meeting to review the document and review our processes. We also, in that meeting, we look at things like audits and joint quality assurance. So moving on to slide 9, this is our pathway. This is our pathway in a very simplistic flowchart diagram. The one in the purple, blue, and yellow is the emotional wellbeing teams. The other one is obviously the EOT teams, and then we interlink. This is based on from redesigning the teams, implementing brand processes, the processes that we put in place. We also devised a document suite that evidence and allow us to record that we're working in that way. It also allows to work on a data set, so we have a joint data set, and in that data set we record all of the children that are referred and what happens to them from the point of referral to the point of closure, whether that's EOT or whether that's emotional wellbeing team, and we track them all the way through at different points of intervention work, different points of making sure that if it transfers between the team, who's working with them and what's happening. It also records the SDQ scores as well, because that's an area that we've been working with the Children in Care Service on, is trying to ensure that we put in place a new SDQ process. So I was involved in redesigning that and offering training to all social workers, supervising social workers, and to foster carers across locality and children in care, so that everybody is aware of the importance of SDQs and what they can be used for, besides them being a mandatory measurement, you know, in terms of the wealth of using one in visits to really unpick with a young person what's going on for them, how they're feeling. It can be a really useful conversational tool to just finding out what's going on in that young person's life. And also, more importantly, if they are meeting that very early signs of, we might need another look at this from somebody, and we might need to get somebody in to offer support from the emotional wellbeing team at this point. So we're working, that's one of the areas that we measure and we're working with teams on as well. So as part of our new joint pathway agreement and the referral process, we do ask for SDQs at the beginning. We do ask for SDQs at the beginning of the referral process, so that we can measure at the end the progress of.
I don't know if anybody can hear, but I think we might have lost Michaela.
Yes, I didn't know whether it was me or just, yeah, it looks like we've lost her.
Shall I carry on? Shall I
yeah,
just...
we need to the end. I'm just
I'll whiz through the slides, don't worry.
Brilliant.
So basically, the next slide just outlines who's the composition of the team. So we've got the emotional wellbeing team, obviously the team manager, and then all of the posts in terms of therapeutic support, social workers are filled, and then the EOT team, you obviously heard from Andy, and then you can see the composition of that team as well.
Sorry, Tony, we're back, I think.
Okay, I'm just rattling through it because we're running short of time. So
do you want me to just quickly go through those slides?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll very quickly go through, because I'm aware of time. Yeah, so if we go up to slide 11 for the pandemic, so there has been an increase in demand for work during the pandemic, as everybody will have probably experienced. And for us, we've tried to carry on the best that we can within our hands. We've carried on seeing children, young people face to face, because we've recognised the importance of keeping that going and the engagement. And children and young people have asked for that as opposed to virtual. They have struggled to work with therapeutic work and engage virtually. Face to face has been very important, and we've just had to keep going with that on a risk assessment basis. Equally, our carers have asked for that, so we have made sure that we've tried to meet that need. And we have
I think
also offered virtual means. Can you hear me?
You keep breaking up, Michaela. Shall I just quickly finish off?
Yeah, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah. And yes, we can do a copy of the slide presentation. Basically, Michaela's just talking about the impact of the pandemic and basically carrying on with the service as business as usual, recognising that obviously the emotional health and wellbeing needs of our young people become more paramount during this period as well. Future of the pathway, obviously Michaela has made reference to some of the work that she's doing and also the team in terms of what they want to do going forward. Very much sort of connected to the fostering and also looking at what placement stability support the team can provide to the carers and the young person to prevent placement breakdown. We're wanting to strengthen the offer to 16 plus young people in transition and joint working with children in care in terms of the strengths and difficulties questionnaire, so we can really measure the impact and the difference we're making in terms of our intervention. In terms of how the surveys have done, there's been a lot of positive feedback. I won't go through it all, but it's extremely positive, recognised obviously through both the audits, feedback from young people, but then also the Ofsted focus visit, where there's a quote there that basically just reaffirms the fact that it's unusual to have a service where there's no waiting time and where they prioritise getting in and actually providing support as and when it's needed, and the connection of the two services together. So that's extremely impressive and something that Michaela, I know Andy want to work on. It's now questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you, Michaela and Andy, for persevering with that. If any members have any questions, if they can indicate, if we can send paper copies of the presentation out, and then if members have questions following, you know, having the time to read that, if you want to send them to myself, I'll make sure that those are passed on. I do have a question from Celia.
Thanks, and thanks for keep going on that presentation. It must have been really difficult for you because of all the problems with IT. I do appreciate it. And also just to say, it's more of a comment really, but this is an extremely challenging area of work, and it's just only made more difficult because of COVID. But I was wanting to ask about placement stability itself, which may not be your area of actually in-depth work, but I'm just wondering, have we got any sort of career development for foster carers, any sort of therapeutic foster caring going on in Wakefield? Because it is a very complex area, and I just think we need to be upfront with all of this. I believe in certain countries in Europe that they're making some progress in these areas, and how do we compare really, you know, for our children?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, can you hear me?
Yes, Michaela, you start.
Yeah. That is actually an area that's really exciting for me at the moment, that we are fully involved in, and both teams as well. So, as we spoke about earlier, it's really important that we're supporting our foster carers and caregivers, so not just foster carers but residential staff as well. So we have increased our offer to the fostering services, and we are going to be offering a package of training, consultation and intervention. So we're kind of taking a bit of ownership of that in terms of Wakefield looking at that bespoke in that for their service area and them knowing their carers. We have a wealth of experience within the two teams that can offer that. That doesn't need to be an external provider where there's licensing issues and copyright issues. We can do this. And so we are going to be offering a package of training to the supervising social workers, because we really recognise we need to strengthen their practice and skills in therapeutic parenting for them to be able to continue to do this as part of their everyday work with carers. And that's starting in March. We've already started putting the training, bespoke training packages together for them, looking at things like psychological safety, PACE as a culture of working with carers and a being, therapeutic parenting, what that means, secure base training, and TCI involvement.
Yeah,
we've also got a training.
There's a lot going on, Michaela. I'm wondering if it would be.
Yeah, there's also training offer
for the next meeting that we actually bring that back, Michaela, as an offer presented by the fostering service, yourself, and also a colleague in the in the FAC team as well, which talks about placement stability and the interventions we're providing, and also recognise the increased need during the pandemic as well. We'd like to bring that back because it's really exciting and it's a joint initiative across different services. Thank you.
And it does involve a full training course on therapeutic parenting and attachment brain development and trauma for carers.
That would be great. Thank you. You know, I think that deserves a place on the agenda really, rather than being rushed at the end. So thank you for that. We will come back to that. If there are no more questions from members, just to thank Michaela and Andy again, and Tony yet again for standing in. It's a good job you're at this meeting, Tony. And we'll move on to item 10, which is the residential transformation overview, and that's Cheryl presenting.
Thank you, Councillor. So I will also attempt to show my slides. Bear with desktop. Okay, so people see everything on my screen. Please let me know when you can see it. Oh, you don't want to see that bit? Can people see that?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to give a very brief basic overview in terms of the residential transformation. So at the moment, what we are doing is putting a proposal together to redesign the whole residential estate to maximise children's outcomes, and this being subject to governance approval. It's currently in its infancy. It is a proposal and nothing has been agreed yet. The reason for the residential transformation is around what we know nationally is that there's a shortage of the right accommodation for our children and young people, and our role in terms of sufficiency is to try to, wherever possible, make placements available within the location, in this case in Wakefield, for our children and young people. The residential transformation proposal also includes working with health around a bespoke unit to be able to respond to the complex and enduring mental health needs of our children and young people. What we know nationally is that secure beds and Tier 4 mental health beds are just not available. You know, you're looking at double figures of children, young people searching for potentially one bed in a particular area. So we wanted to trying to develop a different way with health colleagues to see if we could create our own bespoke arrangement. What we also, as part of the proposal, want to deliver is developing and mirroring the current two-bedded model that we have at the moment. And what that tells us in terms of that being already in place is that it is or it has substantially improved the outcomes for our children and young people living in those two-bedded properties. In order to do that, what the proposal is that we would look to decommission the larger residential homes to create more smaller family bespoke units for our children and young people. And also part of the transformation is looking at the respite and short breaks offer that we have currently offered by Wasdale, and how we could do things differently in respect of that. So the reasons why we want to do it is because we feel it's a way of maximising the best possible outcomes for children in our care. We want to build on the recent success of the smaller homes, as I've just touched on. They work really well. The young people in there, the risks have significantly reduced. And we know, as I've touched on earlier, around the need in terms of the sufficiency strategy, and also the lack of shortage nationally, for us to review our estate and see if we can do something differently. And also in terms of the short breaks, you know, we want to, there has been a consultation prior to the residential transformation proposals with families with regards to what they would want in terms of short breaks going forward. And the outcome of that was predominantly that they wanted more home-based breaks, care for their children. So short breaks taking place at home. So I just wanted to touch on the general principles of it. You know, as I've already mentioned, it's better outcomes for children arising from a more bespoke arrangement. We need to provide a range of placement options for children who are not currently well provided for, and it delivers an outcomes-focused model for our most vulnerable children. It supports with matching arrangements because it is smaller. It's easier to match 2 children than 4, and allow them, you know, the time and energy to help them build relationships and trust in adults. And the unit with the health colleagues is around, you know, working and looking after our own children who have more complex emotional and behavioural needs, and how we can work together with health to try and manage those, rather than sending children and young people out of borough to places where, you know, they don't know anybody. And what we do know from the 2-bedded models is that, you know, children's outcomes are enhanced in the settings. You know, it's very clear within those settings there's been no placement disruptions, there's improved emotional and behavioural presentation and better educational progress. I mean, for the 2-bedders we've got, the 4 young people in there are now all attending school, with, I believe, 3 out of the 4 originally not attending at all. So, you know, the evaluation of the performance within the 2-bedded models, you know, confirms that it works for children and young people. And I just wanted to reflect on here what works well. Some of the staff within the 2-bedded models talk about, and I won't read it in detail, you can see it for yourself, but, you know, they talk about it being a family environment. You build relationships with staff and children, and, you know, isn't that what caring for children is about? It's about, you know, creating a family environment. And as you know, we always opt for foster care in the first instance wherever possible, and we want to create something that's bespoke and mirrors sort of that arrangement. And then just some overview in terms of what the young people tell us. So those young people that are in those properties, again, I'm not going to read it in its detail, you can see that, but, you know, I think some of the things here are really significant. Like, this is my 6th placement in 2 years, it's now my last and longest placement, and I now call it home. And that particular young person is now planning their 18th in that current accommodation. So, you know, there's been a real progress, improvement in terms of achieving outcomes and creating those trusting relationships between carers and children, so they feel that a sense of belonging and that home belongs to them. And then just finally, I just wanted to open it up to any questions that you may have as a result of this presentation.
Thank you, Cheryl. Do we have a timescale for the this programme? Is there anything you're working towards?
So, I mean, it's got to go through the governance arrangements and be signed off first, Lorna. If that is, then we'd be looking at anywhere up to 18 months for this project to see it through to its conclusion.
Okay, thanks. So perhaps, you know, in a few months' time, we could have another update on this, see where we are.
Yeah, absolutely, not a problem.
Lovely. And Jackie Spates just asked if we could have a copy of the slides.
Yeah, I'll make them available.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members? If not, we can move on to item 11, which is the performance overview, and it's back to you, Cheryl.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to give a quick introduction in terms of current performance so far. So just at the end of December, we had 645 children in care. In terms of the 10k population, we had 87 for every 10k in the population, which is higher than the national rate of 67, but a lot lower than the statistical neighbours rate of 97. So, you know, we are significantly under statistical neighbours, but some way to go in terms of national. Just a bit of demographic here in terms of the number of young people in care, in terms of ethnicity, placement types and provision that they're in. And just a bit of an overview in terms of, you know, what's working well so far. We've made lots of progress. We've done a service restructure. Staff teams are very nearly completely permanent. Performance KPIs have improved and sustained, which I'll come on to in a bit, and practice quality improving. And I just wanted to put this in from the Ofsted visit in November, because they concluded that most children in care, including those who are placed out of local authority area, are living in settled and stable placements which meet their needs. Short and long-term placement stability is comparatively good. And I think, you know, that speaks volumes in terms of, you know, the work we've done to support our children and young people in care. So, permanence. This is a very big focus area of activity. Our aim is to ensure that every child has a permanence plan. And I just wanted to give you some figures around the different areas of permanence that we tried to achieve. So in 2020, we had 41 adoptions, and we know there's another 31 being placed, but yet awaiting to be adopted. So the number of adoptions so far this year is higher than in previous years, and you know, we continue to do really well in that area. Also again in 2020, 49 children returned to live with parents. Again, that was another increase, and we currently have about 16 children in care reunifications taking place. And we work very closely with our Families Achieving Change team to support that arrangement and enable some longevity for those placements by offering additional support. And we've done a lot of focus work around special guardianship orders, and we've had significant growth in the last 6 months. We've achieved 29 in the last 6 months, and again that exceeds what we achieved in the previous year. What you can see on the slide at the moment, permanence. So we have introduced a process to confirm children's foster homes as their permanent home when we can't achieve any other areas of permanence, such as SGO or any other means. And we have we've had a number of children formally matched in this way, and that continues to increase. And it was only, I think it was last week, I signed another 8 off as in the year, so another 8 children were matched. So that's the closest to permanence for these children that we can get. And we do know that our fostering panels at the moment are quite full with matching. So again, it's another focused area of activity. Health assessments. So as of, I think I missed a slide, apologies, just go back. Placement stability. So what we've got here is fewer children are experiencing 3 or more placement moves, and that's gone down. So we're at 9.5% below our maximum target of 10%. And the number of children in care in the same placement for more than 2 years in December was 64. And again, that's representing an overall increase in the last 12 months. So we are seeing through the work of Michaela's team, with CAMS, with processes in place, we are seeing some real positive results in terms of placement stability. Performance, so health assessments as of the end of December, again we achieved 94% of health assessments of under 5-year-olds and 92 for children who were aged 5 to 18 years old. So a real significant improvement in that area. And again, a review of the process to follow in respect of that. So social workers own those assessments and lead on those with our health colleagues. Personal education plans, again, just a bit of an overview in terms of At the end of December, we were currently at 71% of children in care who had up-to-date PEPs. And again, we continue to engage our education colleagues, schools and virtual schools in respect of driving up performance in that area and focusing specifically on children's achievements and aspirations, enabling them to get to where they want to be. And then just a bit of an overview in terms of NEET. So that's for young people not in education, employment or training. And in December, again, 31% of care leavers were not in education, employment or training. Lower than in November 20 and below the national maximum target of 39%, and compared with our statistical neighbours of 45. So again, I think we are making progress in that area. And it was touched upon earlier, I think, in the review of the implementation plan for leavers in care, that there is various activity taking place around trying to work with our care leavers around getting them into education, employment and training, linking in with the employment hub and various other partners. And we've seen a significant increase in the completion of SDQs as of December. It was 93%. And we continue to ensure that SDQs are completed in line with health assessments, because they will inform the health assessments and any intervention going forward. And where it's needed, our emotional health and wellbeing CAMHS team will provide help to children in care within 4 weeks. And Ofsted noted that as a particular strength. So overall, I think, and I hope you agree, some real progress made in that area. So again, happy to open it up to any questions. Any questions? Have I gone?
Just wait to see if Joy's typing a message. Did you hear what I don't know whether I was muted then, but I was just saying well done for the figures. Despite the year we've had, we've got some really good progress on the figures, so well done for those. I'm just waiting for Joy, she's typing a message.
Cheryl, can you please not share your screen anymore, please?
So Joy is just commenting that that the entire meeting has probably been the most positive I've ever seen. So much hard work everywhere. Thank you. So thanks for that, Joy. That's good to hear. And I think Councillor Spates is just wanting to comment. And Jackie agrees, lots of excellent work. So I think there's no specific questions, so we'll move on. Thank you very much for that, Cheryl, and we'll move on to item 12, which is the quarterly advocacy report, and Kerry McKenna is here to give that report.
Thank you, Councillor. I shall make this exceptionally quick because we're 3 minutes to 12 and I've got another meeting.
It's okay. We have said the meeting can run on till 12:30, so don't worry. Well, yeah, I've got to go, unfortunately, but obviously I'm hoping that you've all seen the report and read it. I made it brief, so aware that you probably have lots of things to look at. In general, really positive, and we've continued not just in Q3 but for the entirety of 2020 and into 21 with COVID. Continue to operate as a service as best as normal as we could. Obviously, when we've been in those periods of actual lockdown, we have done a lot more virtually, and for some young people, they engaged really well with that, and actually some of them better than they would have in an alternative method. So I think, as most of us will do, it's about looking at when normality does come back, taking the good things that we've learned and continuing to run with them. In terms of the report, really basic information in terms of the key headlines. Really, we continue to get that really positive feedback with the young people we're working with. We continue to get the majority of referrals coming in via the young person themselves, which I always think is a massive plus point. We've continued to support with the really important meetings for them, such as KIC reviews, wishes and feelings, issues, etc. Some have been around education as well.
I think a really interesting thing that's happened over COVID is the massive increase in referrals from actual social workers. That has gone up an awful lot. In terms of the KIC young people that we've worked with in Q3, that was 66 young people. We've also sent all the referrals for intros and exits information about what we can do to support them. For the intros, information about the Children in Care Council, etc. We've not had the greatest success in getting feedback from them. We changed the way we were doing intros and exits as part of the new contract that we were awarded last year. So we're looking at that, and we've had meetings with various colleagues, and we're looking at how we can bring that back up to what we used to get. We used to get a lot more feedback than we are getting. So those plans are underway. We have actually had the highest number of referrals from young people, so that was really good. Age range, our youngest being 5 years old and our oldest being 21. We've supported young people with meetings, either going for them or with them, and supported them, and the majority of those have been digital. Some young people have fed back that that's been quite hard to feel like they can fully engage, and we've passed those thoughts on as well. The massive success, although it's created an awful lot of work, is the number of IVs. The number of independent visitors, people wanting to become an independent visitor. So at the end of last year, I think we'd had 32. So we're on the recruitment process now, and we've interviewed 26. We think it dropped, because what we do expect, and this happens with a lot of volunteer recruitment, regardless of what's going on in the world, you do get people dropping out because they might volunteer in between finishing a job and starting a job, etc. So it's gone from the 32 down to 26, but they've all been interviewed. So we're about to start ID checks and training, etc. But it's really positive, and the wonderful thing, because if you remember me being at a meeting in the past when we used to sit around a table, I was talking about, alongside Kate, the fact that we really wanted some male volunteers, and 4 of the 26 are male, so that's brilliant. We've continued to link in with the drop-ins at the residential units for young people in the settings around the district. Again, we've had to think differently about how we do things, and again we're trialling some new things. I think we're going to trial a Zoom session in March with one of the units, but linking in with the young people and the managers of the settings, and that's continued to go well. I think a really good plus point is that only one young person did not engage. Of all the referrals that we've had over that period, there was only one young person that didn't engage with our offer, which I think is really positive. In terms of issues and concerns, I've already mentioned the intros and exits, but we're working on that. We're doing a big piece of work, and I've linked in with some of the colleagues that have been present today in terms of sharing our information. We've created flyers for young people, for KIC, but also for other areas that we do advocacy. We've linked in with the PAs, the school nurses. So we're really trying to raise awareness of this service for young people directly. We've obviously sent out information and do on a regular basis to professionals, but really wanted to ensure that young people knew about what we were doing. So we're also developing a newsletter that we'd want to be passed on to the young people in care, and we'll probably look at doing that once a year, and that's in development now. Another impact on the service was that we've recently lost a worker who's gone on, not lost, that sounds awful, we haven't lost her, I know where she is. She's just started a maternity leave, so we're recruiting for that. But the really sad news was that we lost the team manager of the service in December, and many of you would have known Kate. She would have come to these meetings, or you would have linked in with her. And we're hopeful that the new team manager will be starting in March, but that's obviously had an impact on the team and things going forward, etc. So I think that's it, unless anyone's got any questions.
Thank you, Kerry. And yes, I remember us talking about the independent visitors and the need for more. So it's really good to hear that you've had such a successful recruitment for that.
It's just been amazing. So yeah, really positive.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that report. Does anyone have any questions? No one's indicated in the chat. If not, thank you very much, Kerry, and look forward to again at a future meeting, hopefully in person at some point. And at this point, we've only got one item left on the agenda, but I now ask that the live stream be turned off.